Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk Business. I'm your host Rick Jenkins and I'm glad that you are here, whether you are listening to us on 94.5 The Answer, checking out one of our video podcasts, or maybe just watching a video on our YouTube channel. Appreciate you being here. Our next guest is Doug Lineberry. Doug is a partner at Burr Forman and he is an expert in intellectual property law. And I tell you what, I just started a new venture and it's good for me to hear what he's got to say today. We want to get a little legal do's and don'ts from our friend Doug. How you doing, pal?
I'm good, Rick. Thanks for having me on.
You are very welcome. I appreciate you being here. I'll tell you what, let's just start off with really simple. Define intellectual property for us.
Sure. Easiest way to define it are the intangibles. They're going to be your patents, your trademarks, your copyrights, your trade secrets. Four very different types, so you can't paint them all with the same brush.
Right.
It really is what makes your business worth money.
Right.
It's how you assist over competitors. It's how you gain a competitive edge. It's how you expand. Mm-hmm. And really, it's something that unfortunately is overlooked a lot by clients.
I see what you're saying. So if I'm looking up here, and I look, right here is the Let's Talk Business logo, I'm assuming that is a piece of my intellectual property.
Absolutely, it is. Trademark. And the reason that you want that, Rick, is it identifies you. People know, hey, this is Rick's show. I know what kind of quality podcasts he put out. I know the programs. I know the guests. And that identifies to them what they can expect from not only programs you've made in the past, but what you make in the future.
And what other types of things might you trademark other than a logo?
Absolutely. Lots of stuff. Sounds, smells.
Sounds?
The Harley Davidsons that you hear on the street, and now we have a $1,000 fine against downtown. Trademark sound. You and I cannot make a motorcycle that sounds like a Harley Davidson.
Really?
Yep.
And a smell?
Smell.
Like a perfume?
Absolutely. Well, the Verizon store. When you go in the Verizon store, they actually have a trademark on the scent.
No way.
I promise you. And it is their trademark. If you and I have a mobile phone electronics store, we cannot have that smell in it. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it besides taking care of your logos and taking care of word marks. There are really some unique things out there.
How interesting is that? Common intellectual property mistakes. What are some of the most common? And how do you avoid them?
Absolutely. Learn what you have. That right there is the real kicker. You as a small business, Rick, you're starting out. You and I have had a discussion. We sort of set a roadmap for what you can expect. A lot of folks don't appreciate this. They don't appreciate that they have intellectual property from day zero of a business.
The value of intellectual property to a business. In some cases, we're talking, it's worth millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And
Sure.
You talk about the Googles of the world, but
Yep.
Talk a little bit about just your average Joe. Rick Jenkins, value to me. Tell me.
Absolutely. Rick, think about it. With your logo and as the program continues and as you've had a cadre of guests on and everybody associates you with entrepreneurism, South Carolina, building a business, that value is going to grow. We call it goodwill.
Right.
And what happens, let's say here in 5 years, you're like, hey, I want to transcend from this program. I want somebody else to handle it. They're not going to buy Rick Jenkins. Rick's going to go somewhere else. What they're going to buy is that goodwill that you've established through consistent use of your trademark and through quality programming. They're going to buy what you created through your intellectual property.
So let's stick on that a little bit. Let's say that I do want to do something different and I branch off and I have someone else run this for me, and now all of a sudden I'm going and purchasing maybe another existing business. What are the types of things that now I have to consider?
Fantastic. You've got to make certain that they did their homework too, Rick. You want to look at it and say, hey, have you protected your trademarks? If there are patents out there, have they been protected? Are assignments obtained? A lot of issues that folks just don't think about. But when you go to this new business, you've got to kick its tires because you're not just buying that goodwill that's associated with the trademark, you're buying everything else. You're buying the trade secrets, you're buying their inventions, you're buying all their branding pieces. So you want to ask first, have they done a good job of protecting it? If not, how do we circle back and take care of that?
Right. I would assume that, the cost to protect, your content and your scent or whatever it is, it's going to vary, of course, depending on all the things. But is this a really expensive venture to protect a logo?
Awesome question. No, Rick, it's not. And really, it's one of the de minimis costs, that design patents and some of the others on the low end. Now, sure, if you invent a fusion reactor tonight and you come to me, that's going to cost some money.
Right.
But for taking care of your branding, your logos, your word marks, basic design patents, no, not a great cost to that. Is there a cost? Sure. Is it slow to get it? Absolutely. But tell folks that going in, and it really does a lot to it does a lot to really de-stress a situation. Know what's coming, know what to do with it, and be told those prices up front. And there's almost always a government fee, so add that to it as well.
Of course there is. Wouldn't be Uncle Sam without that. Burr and Forman, let's just end with this. You guys have, if I remember right, six offices in South Carolina, plus a whole lot outside of South Carolina. You do intellectual property law, and I know there are folks in your firm that do a lot of other things. What kind of things do you do?
That's great. Think of us as a big crescent. We stretch all the way, basically from the southeast, from Alabama, all the way up to Delaware. Litigation, any sort of enforcement mechanisms you want done, bankruptcy, trusts, estates, general corporate work, banking, FDA, you name it, we've got someone that can help you with it.
And you are you sit in the Greenville office.
I do.
And y'all have a Charleston office and a Columbia office and a few others. Do you have, for example, in Columbia, is there an IP person in Columbia and Charleston, or are you kind of the dude for the state?
Great question. We actually have an IP person in Charleston. We don't in Columbia. We do in Charlotte. We don't have any in Atlanta, but we do have enough to where we can cover those areas. The great thing about IP is it's federal, so you don't necessarily have to be a South Carolina firm to use a South Carolina attorney, but you do want to use someone who speaks the speak. If your best friend's an insurance attorney, probably don't want them doing your IP.
Right. Understood. Doug, I appreciate you joining.
Thank you, Rick. It's been a pleasure.
It was really good talking business with Doug Lineberry. He is a partner at Burr and Forman, specializing in intellectual property law. Folks, we are going to take a really brief break, and when I say brief, I mean brief, only about 30 seconds, but here is a company you should know. When you come back, we'll have our next guest.